to Brazilian live audience and the viewer of Live Pharma Coalition that we call it as a LPC from the LPC Facebook page and YouTube channel live. Before we begin, let me tell you one announcement about the LPC sessions time. As you all are aware about the LPC sessions, that is the Sunday morning 11 a.m. as per the Indian Standard Time. But due to a time difference of the different countries like the Brazil, we like to keep the some country LPC global leadership sessions at the evening time 6 p.m. as per the Indian Standard Time. So today's topic is very nice, Brazil and India. That is the pharma perspective. Before we start the today's LPC sessions, I would like to share the current number of the LPC and aim, objective, mission, vision for pharmaceutical and healthcare industry across the globe. I would like to share my screen here now. Yes, you must be able to see the first slide. There is a live pharmacologians. On top of that, it has mentioned India's largest online discussion platform. And below that, we have mentioned that the learning and sharing the forum. So our aim, objective, and mission about the LPC is very clear from the day one. That is, LPC is a learning and sharing forum, and it's remain the same across all the department, sub-department of the pharma industry. It's become the largest online pharma discussions because of the various things that we will see one by one. As if we look at the number of the LPC, it's every week it's increasing. Whether it's like the first, that is the number of the pharmaceutical industry as well as the institutions which is in connected with the LPC, it's increasing, and it's currently it's a 60 plus. Speakers, moderator, and panelists, those who is associated with the LPC from the various industry. It is 130 plus speakers, moderator, and panelists. We do have it in our WhatsApp group. And the current reach of the Facebook page of all four sessions of for 1 month, that is going to close to 10,000 to 50,000 Facebook page reach we have it. As I said, there will be the various the things. So these three are the major thing to make the Live Pharma Coalition LPC as India's largest online pharma discussion platform. And one man journey, it has been escalated with our three more eminent executive members, that is the Yashwant Mishra, Vinod Vaswani, and Isis Verma. Not only that, but those who has did the bifurcations with the great leadership team week wise. Week one is for the dedicated for the leadership team. Week two is for the global. Week three is for young. Week four is for academic. Week four is for women. Now we are here for the week two, and it's a global leadership team. We have it. As I said, now we have a biggest team of the executive members that every week is taken care by our four executive members. Today we will have here for the global leadership team, which has been like the sequence wise as per like the connections that has been like the leaded by the Praveen Pandey, Mr. Hitesh Uprati, Mr. Saurabh Mishra, and now they will join Mr. Ashish Srivastava for the global executive team of the LPC. As I said at the beginning, the numbers, yes, LPC discussion Facebook page reached 20,000 plus, 3,000 is the Facebook engagement. That is all the four the videos it has been seen maximum by people in each week. 1,000 plus is the YouTube reach. Now one more the feeder added into a LPC, that is the mentor program. It's a customized mentor program of the LPC for our registered member just to get it the non-profitable cost record for the streaming. Thank you so much to the Live Pharma Coalition LPC-63 global leadership team, which has been come as like the live as well as our Facebook and the YouTube channel audience, those who has watched this episode. Great thanks to all of them. Now coming to the LPC-64 global leadership team, very nice topic that I said it at the beginning. That is Brazil, India, pharma perspective. Here I will have my the panelist and the moderator along with me. Today's sessions it will be panel by two eminent our the executive member, and Praveen, maybe he will shortly join. We are missing him. He's facing some technical issue. Praveen Pandey. He is working currently as a DGM, International Marketing Director. Hitesh sir, Hitesh Uprati is a founder, CEO, and MD of Geneva, Tanzania. He is based at the Tanzania. And along with the Hitesh sir, Our the second panelist is Saurabh Mishra, AGM, Otsuka, India. So over to both our the panelists to take it ahead the further proceeding of introductions of all our the three eminent speakers, those who is highlighting about the today's topic. Over to you, Hitesh sir and Saurabh.
Thank you, Mr. Raman. Thank you very much. Welcome to all the viewers from Facebook and YouTube to this special session of LPC, I would say, because LPC, as we all know, is 11 a.m. in the morning. And today is the first time when we are having a LPC session on 6 p.m. Indian time. Uh, the topic is important, the people are important, hence the time is also important. With this, I welcome Mr. Ashish Srivastav, Mr. DP Srivastav, Madam Andresia, and Mr. Saurabh in this particular session. Let me introduce our speakers, starting with Mr. DP sir. Mr. DP Srivastav is a veteran in pharma industry in nutshell. Whatever I know little about him, he started his career with GlaxoSmithKline BChem in those era from Jamshedpur headquarters, if I'm not wrong. And I know Mr. DP Srivastav since 1992-93 when he was line manager in McLeod's. He was taking care of UP and Rajasthan, and I met him first time somewhere in Varanasi in 92-93. And since then, he has grown in McLeod's. He built McLeod's, I would say, first in domestic, then in international. From domestic, Mr. Srivastav moved to international, and he is the founder of McLeod's international business. That is what I can say. Then he moved to Unimark, and then he moved to Brazil. He was the CEO of Milan in Brazil for a longer time. Then at one point of time when you think that now I have to go back to home, he came back to India and he started his own consulting business. The name of his consulting consulting company is Nudes Consulting, where he does a lot of consulting. In fact, what he says, he is more busy after retirement what he was during the job. So it is our privilege to have Mr. DP Srivastav today in LPC, and I'm sure with his vast knowledge, not only us as a panelist, but all the viewers would be very, very benefited. Our second speaker is Mr. Ashish Srivastav. Mr. Ashish Srivastav has more than 30 years experience in pharma industry. Mr. Ashish started his career with a French multinational called Servier. Then Mr. Ashish was with Ranbaxy in India, and he moved to international business in 1995 with Cadila Pharmaceuticals. From Cadila, he moved to Lupin and then Novartis. So his major tenure in international business was with Lupin and Novartis. And then around, I think, 10 to 12 years back, Ashish started his own business with a company called Sienna Life Sciences, which is a consulting firm. So today, Ashish gives consulting to many Indian companies, companies like even McLeod's, companies like even Manish Pharma, companies like even quite a few companies where Ashish is giving his consulting. And Ashish has expertise to market entry for bit difficult markets like Latam, like US, all those markets, and even Southeast Asia. Ashish has the specialization of those markets. Welcome, Mr. Ashish. Our third speaker today is Miss Andresia. Miss Andresia is coming from Brazil, and we thank you her. She is here on a Sunday morning. I think there is around 9:30 a.m. at Brazil there, and Andresia is online with us. Andresia started her career in 2006 in pharmaceuticals, and her major tenure was with Milan, where she spent around 14 years, and she was in projects and business development in Milan. Welcome, Andresia, and we would like to learn more about the details, the in-depth about the pharmaceuticals regulatory in Brazil from you. Welcome all. Thank you once again. And I hand over dais to Mr. D.P. Srivastav.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening to everyone. And thank you very much for the lovely introduction. Though there is a lot of exaggeration, but I will try my best to let everybody understand the Brazilian market as much as possible. So thank you very much to LPC, and thank you very much, Ashish and Andresa. Let's enjoy this session, and let's do the knowledge dissemination so that we are able to educate our friends about the Brazilian market. So before I start the presentation, I would like to say something that Brazil is a mystery. As all of us know, unfortunately, Brazil lost today, but otherwise, we all know Brazil for football. But Brazil is known for many more things which a lot of us do not know sitting here in India. But it was a mystery. It is a mystical country. And when I visited also, I realized that it had too many things to unravel as we went through. And basis in both Strides and Mylan. I just want to correct Hitesh that I had gone as a CEO for Strides, and then Strides was taken over by Mylan. And luckily for me, I continued in Mylan. So that was some achievement in the sense that the business got established very, very well. And Strides being an Indian company, so the perspective is the Indian company's entrance into the Brazilian market, and what was taken forward by Mylan as a takeover was an Indian company. So the foundation of the business that went to Mylan in Brazil was basically from Indian company. So before that, as Hitesh had mentioned, that I was looking after the exports of Macloids for a long time, and I must tell you that for 7 years I failed in Brazil, and I kept on trying, visited Brazil many times, but every time I failed, and I realized that Brazil is a difficult country. But as Providence would have it, and as luck may be, I was back in Brazil, but this time I was staying there. So obviously the perspective became different and understanding became different. And the fact that, the Brazilians are much more uptight than other people is a thing which becomes as a hindrance. But it also is an opportunity for an Indian company because there is not much crowd. The crowd is very small. In fact, the importers from India are very less as compared to the various other local companies. So let's start, Andresa, the presentation, and we'll take it step by step from there. Ashish, you can keep on pitching in between. You can comfortably take people. See, the whole idea is that we will try and make our people better understood, have more knowledgeable after this meeting. But I would like to state that the Brazil as a country is larger than India in terms of the pharmaceutical market. So when we have a market of 21, 22 billion, against that, the Brazilian market is around about 25 billion. So the size being larger, the opportunity being bigger, one session of 1.5 hours, 2 hours may not be really sufficient to cover all aspects. So our job here will be to raise the curiosity and also make people understand the accessibility. It is not that, Brazil is not accessible market. It's very much an accessible market, and how it is accessible, I think we will explain that. Put together between three of us, we will try and explain how very accessible this market is, how very opportunistic in terms of the scope of the business. It's a very good scope. There are quirky differences. There are some differences in this market which are a little quirky in nature. I use that word because it doesn't follow a norm which is there for US or EMEA or even big countries. It follows its own norms. So Brazilians, as they are very unique in their personality, they are also unique in their business ways. So that's what we will talk about today. I want to be very conversational and not professorial in telling you about the Brazilian market. So Raman and Saurabh, you can take the questions and you can route it through all of you to ask the question at the end of this presentation. We'll try and finish the presentation as fast as possible. There are not many slides. There's about 10 slides. So we will start talking about it right away. Okay, Andresa, next one, please. Okay, the agenda for this meeting would be to discuss on the country profile, mainly what is the demographic, economic, political, and population of the country. The Brazilian market size, how it is going, what is the various parts of the market, or what is retail, what is non-retail, the environment and analysis of the tax, of the legal structure, of the reimbursement, market access, etc., etc. Regulatory environment, which would be very important for people to understand what is the overview and what are the recent changes because of pandemic. Now, the changes because of pandemic, Andresa will talk about it in details, but it is temporary in nature. So she will cover all these points in the subsequent slides. Yes, Andresa, next one, please. Hitesh and all of you, you can stop me if I'm going too fast. Huh?
Yeah, sure.
No, sir, you are perfectly fine. As soon as we will not able to follow you, we will stop you. Don't worry.
Sure. So, Brazil at a glance, in terms of population, is the sixth most populated country, 212 million people. The biggest pharmaceutical market in Latin America. The number 2 is Mexico, and in that order. So the first is Brazil. Seventh largest pharmaceutical market in 2018. Unfortunately, it because of the currency devaluation, the market in terms of dollar terms has not grown as fast as it has grown in reais term. Reais is the local currency. Brazilian reais, I will talk about it a little later. There are 450 pharmaceutical companies in Brazil, which is an approximate number. It could be higher, lesser by some 5-10%. The pharmaceutical market has grown at 53% in this period for 5 years. So if it was 100, it is now 153. So it has grown pretty rapidly. The year on year, the CAGR is around 7%. So 7% CAGR on a big base of 129 billion reais, which is approximately $25 billion, which is large market. And on this market, it has been growing at the rate of 7 CAGR year on year. Brazil, in terms of the population, as we all know, that the elderly population is growing, and in Europe and Brazil are two countries where there is very large number of elderly people. So if you relate this with the COVID impact, the COVID impact was the highest in Brazil after Europe in the initial days. And that was because there was very high number of elderly people. That is nearly 30 million out of 212 million. It's 13% of the population is above 60, which when we compare with India, it's around 7 to 8%. So our population of elderly is around 7 to 8%. So we got saved in the first round, but we got exposed in the second round because we put our guards down. Similarly, Brazil also put the guards down and they suffered a lot in terms of the impact of the pandemic. It is expected in the few years from now that the elderly population will grow. This is a very important indicator for all the diseases which is related to management. So diabetes or a neurological disorder or cardiological disorders. These are the markets, the joints, the stents. These are the products which will sell in future in the orthopedic related products, etc., etc. This is a market which is full of opportunities. So if 25% of the population in few years from now is going to be above 60, obviously the healthcare will be strained and there will be a lot of demand on the healthcare to keep on giving all the support that it requires with respect to medicines, with respect to bed, with respect to infrastructure, with respect to various other requirements of healthcare system. So let's go to the next one. I wanted to talk about this opportunity because in terms of opportunity, this becomes a very important indicator for companies to look at Brazil in future. Economic perspectives are very important and it has to be understood because it always dovetails economic perspectives and the numbers in economy is very important to dovetailing the requirement of various issues with regards to healthcare, with regards to even consumerism. It depends on the economic perspectives. So the GDP growth, which was negative, even when I was there in Brazil in 16, 17, it was negative, but it picked up. And there was a political change from left government to a right government. Because of this change in the politics, the growth rate started picking up. And the GDP went to 1.3, 1.2. Just imagine that this is a 3 trillion economy. It's a 3 trillion economy and anything that goes as positive is of course good, but it was a 6 to 7% GDP growth in around 10, 15 years back. So it went through a phase when it went down and then it started picking up because of the reforms that the government started initiating. And these reforms were very important to get the economy on the positive side. Unfortunately, in the beginning of the year 2020, that is the time when the impact of pandemic was there and took a negative, which all over the world we have seen the negative growths. It saw a negative growth of -5%, but it picked up and it has now gone to higher growth rates. The pre-pandemic, it has gone into a higher growth rates at 3.1 and 2.5% is what it is ranging into. So it's a very important indicator to understand the economic growth or GDP, which is similar GDP as our GDP. But just have to understand that the per capita GDP of Brazil is 7 times higher than us because we have a similar 3 trillion type of GDP. And on that, if you see per capita, if the population is 6-7 times lesser than us, obviously the GDP is 7 times higher per capita, that is per capita GDP. Exchange rate, which is very important, and you have to see it from the perspective of India also, that in this period, when you are seeing a period of 2016 to 2021, that's 5-year period, the exchange rate has gone down to 5. It was at 3.4 and it has now gone down to 5. However, it is very important to understand that it is in line with the world. It is not something which has gone way out in the sense that it is not a collapsing economy where the dollar exchange rate would be an indicator of something like that. It is not a collapsing this economy. It is an economy which is on growth, and it is facing those issues which we all see when economy is growing. And this is going through a big change. There has been a diametrical change from a left to a right wing. So the pains of any government which is moving from a socialist angle to a rightist or capitalist angle, you will have problems. This will be a normal thing. Therefore, this next indicator would be inflation. So what is the inflation? It's around 4%, 3%, which is what we see in India. So the inflation is also not, which is much higher. In fact, there is a lot of comparison with Indian economy and the economy of Brazil. When we see that both the governments have become rightist, and therefore there is a movement towards reforms. The reforms are necessary for us to understand that it will always fuel growth. If there are reforms, there will be growth. So this is exactly what is happening in Brazil. The interest rate, which was at 13-14% in 16-17, has now come down to 6.5%, which is what we have in India. So you will start seeing that there are parallels between India and Brazil, and these are the areas where the parallels are. What are the challenges? These are the positive perspectives, but what are the challenges? Challenges in Brazil is tax burden. So as in India, you have a very high tax rate. The GST type of a tax, which is known as ICMS in Brazil, in VAT is high. So that impacts the cost of goods. There is price control similar to what we have in NPPI here. They have CMED in Brazil, and which controls the prices. So there is no uncontrolled prices in Brazil. You can predict exactly what price you can get into and what type of discounting structure is there in Brazil. The API is not their own. So Brazil doesn't have the API of own. So API is always been, we are one of the largest supplier of API, and we continue to have a edge in API. But that is a challenge for the Brazilian market because their cost of production goes up as most of their APIs are imported. Burdensome bureaucracy. We are so used to this that anything when a paper has to move from one place to another, it's always a problem. The first thing you think of that how it is going to happen. So the changes in the bureaucracy is similar to what we are having. But I would say that it is not something which is very easy to overcome. Bureaucrats are used to certain things and they don't want themselves to be compromised. They feel they are compromised, but it's in the interest of the nation to make it the bureaucracy more simple. Labor laws are complex, and that's because it's a legacy of the left, which is left with the labor laws being highly difficult to tackle. There are a lot of stories on the labor laws, and I would only say that I had to face few of them when I was heading there. But those are getting now reforms are there in the labor laws also. Political uncertainty is part of any democracy. Any democracy will always face political uncertainty because democracy asks questions. It is not you're not asked questions. You can do arbitrarily whatever you want. So when it asks questions, it is always going to be uncertain. If somebody is good, is not taken as good if you're seeing from tinted glasses. So those things are always going to be a problem in a democracy. No sustained significant investment in R&D. I think this is a very important point, which becomes an opportunity for Indian companies who have great riches in the R&D. So India is very rich in R&D. I don't know whether all of you realize this, that the technical, the tech transfers are one of the biggest opportunities of business while working with the local Brazilian companies, because they are always hungry for new technologies. And any company with good technologies, I'm sure they would be having a good opportunity in Brazil. There is always a complaint that there is limited allocation of resources to public health, because it got challenged during the time of pandemic. It got challenged, and such a beautiful health system, which I thought was one of the best in the world in Brazil, got completely challenged during the pandemic time, and therefore there is limited allocation, and the allocation has to increase more in days to come. Andresa, next slide, please. So what I mean to say is that, economic and the challenges and perspectives are two very important sides of the coin, because on one hand you have opportunities, and the other hand you have these challenges. So in Brazil market, what is very important is to understand that these challenges can be faced. It is not that these challenges are unsurmountable. There is always one factor which comes into the mind of everybody. When you come to India, and if you are a Portuguese-speaking Indian, a Portuguese-speaking Brazilian, or a European from Portugal, how can you work in India without knowing English? Similarly, if you are an Indian who's speaking English and he goes to Brazil, how can he work there without knowing Portuguese? So the local language is very important to know, and you must make efforts to learn the language. And once you learn the language, it becomes very, very easy to. In fact, I can tell you that I didn't go to classes, but my executive assistant who was looking after market research, she insisted that I must learn the language. And when I learned the language, the access to distributors, access to various other company people, various people that I was meeting in the market became far easier. So the success started coming only when the language was started getting understood. So that's a very important point, that I would say that learning the language, Portuguese, is very, very important in going to Brazil market. Okay, let's see the Brazilian market now. Yes, Andresa, next one. Brazilian market actually is, as I mentioned to you, that it is a larger market. And we are seeing all these numbers in reais. You will have to do the calculation dividing by 5. So once you keep on dividing by 5, it will be very easy for you to remember the numbers. The market is growing at the rate of 8.8% as of now. So if you see from the months of January, February, March, this has been far more faster growing than it was in the earlier times. And you will see this in the MAP numbers of the second slide, the second one, which is this point. You will see that these two numbers, that is the second picture, will show that 8.8% is the 12-month figure. In 12-month time, you have moved, and from like-to-like figure, from YTD February-March to 2020 to YTD February-March in 2021, you have grown by 6.3%. Next one, which is very, very, very important to note, is this, that the market, despite all its problems of various pandemic and all that. See, this is one thing which you must understand, that pandemic was very difficult to handle. We saw it here in India that pandemic increased the demand of products, and the spurt in the demand caused shortages, because we in India, although we are producing country, we were not able to cater to the demand, the increased demand of various products, be it hydroxychloroquine or be it tocilizumab, etc., etc. Everything was sort of in shortage. Imagine that Brazil was not producing most of these drugs. And when it was not producing, you can imagine the stress that it caused. There was a repressed demand. The demand was repressed. Therefore, there were changes made in the Anvisa laws, which again Andresa will speak about, where the demand was created for products, and demand was created because of pandemic, and you had all COVID-related drugs, which included midazolam, fentanyl, enoxaparin, etc., etc. The government relaxed its rules. The Anvisa relaxed its rules to accommodate the products to come from India, only India. The GMP of India was accepted as it is. So a product registered in India, we were able to sell in Brazil without the registration process for a short window. This window is open till 16th of September, and as Andresa says that this will get extended. Andresa, can I have your views on this, please?
Yeah, sure. This flexibilization of Anvisa, for sure, they are going to extend until the pandemic not getting over, but it goes more on track. So this is a good opportunity. We can have more products to the country, and there is an opportunity to do business, of course, within India, which is our major partner in this sense, and in other markets for sure, as you rightly said.
So this is
I would like to understand.
Yes.
Sorry to disturb, sir. I would like to understand which all products are means which all products are allowed to import in this window. I'm sure that all the product would not be allowed. There would be a certain range of products which are allowed in this window due to a pandemic.
I just read out Atracurium.
Certain list or what?
It's not a specific list. So it's any product which can be used in the hospital area, can be used during as an aid for coronavirus disease. So any product which is related to the patient care in this moment, then Anvisa it's giving this flexibilization with the rules.
Okay, Andres, actually, I have a list.
Understood.
I have a list, Hitesh. You can, I can share this with you later. It's atracurium, diazepam, fentanyl, midazolam, rocuronium, and enoxaparin.
Yeah, this is one of the examples. These products are an example of the hospital side, which are being largely used nowadays for the therapies. But of course, there are more products that.
Yeah, there are more products. There are more products.
I just want to, put a comment, ask a question here. Do these products, whichever company exports to Brazil, they stand a regulatory advantage subsequently? Was the pandemic?
No, Ashish, none. There is no relationship with the current laws, which we will speak about a little later, the pandemic laws. There is no guarantee that these will be having some consideration in the later days with regards to quality and with regards to approval. So that is not the Brazilian trait. The Brazilian trait is once they become okay, they forget everything that you have done. Right, Andresa?
Yeah, actually you have to compromise with the documentation or anything that is missing. And then you need to apply there after the time that you ask Anvisa.
Exactly. So it's today it's compromised, but tomorrow when it is getting regularized, that time the documentation will have to be upgraded to the Anvisa requirements.
Exactly. Yes.
Ashish, did you understand this?
Yes, surely.
It's very temporary, very, very temporary.
Yeah, and each company needs to include a chronogram for that.
Yes, it has to give a plan as to how they're going to ensure that these deficiencies are taken care in days to come. Okay, So next slide, Andresa. Raman, we will need more time at the end of the day, end of the call, because most of the questions with regards to the regulatory issues will be handled by Andresa, and she will need time to explain exactly what are the requirements and what are the barriers. So there are two parts of the business. The one business is retail, which is pharmacy business, and the other business is institutional business. In terms of the breakup, it is more or less 60-50, 60-40. So 60% goes to retail and 40% goes to institutional non-retail business. You will notice this, that the businesses, both of them have grown. The business in retail has grown by 9.4% and non-retail has grown by 7.8%. So an average growth of 8%, let's say, and that's why you have a number of 8.8%. So it's very significant that both the businesses keep on growing. So the medicines are sold through the pharmacies, and it is not covered by insurance. It's not covered by any government. Whatever is sold through pharmacy, it's a paid one. It is paid by the out of pocket, which is what we do here in India. Any pharmacy purchases are all out of pocket. No insurance companies or no government programs are covering that. A small segment is the segment of high complexity, high cost drugs, example oncology, cold chain, etc., are sold through deliveries. There is a thing called as deliveries, which is different from e-pharmacy. Okay, there is a division of companies which take care of these deliveries, where high cost drugs are delivered to the patient directly. There is the home administration which is required in cancer patients. Cancer patient, you have to do the administration in the hospitals only. But there is a division of home care which goes and does this. There is this Pharmacia Popular, means the cheap products. Again, something which we have in India also. We have the cheap generics, which is being supported by India, and we are having a program by which we are reducing the cost of the medicine. Similarly, in Brazil, the Pharmacia Popular is being there for many years. It covers for selected group of diseases, and the prices are reduced considerably for these products. Then there are health operators which are bound to cover costs of oral oncology treatment administered in outpatient. So the health operators will ensure that these drugs, which are oncology expensive medicines, are delivered to the patients directly. Next is that in institutional business, this is very interesting, and my major part of business or my tenure was in institutional business in Brazil. And Brazil has a very large part of business which is covered by the government purchases. So there is a Ministry of Health which is doing the purchases through the three arms: the federal, the state, and the municipalities. So these three wings are very important. But above that, there are three different types of hospitals also: the private hospitals, the public hospitals, and the private payers, which is the small hospitals and clinics. So these are 60-40. 60 is towards public and 40 is towards private. So more business can happen through public business, and lesser is through the private, because health was always a priority for the Brazilian government. The government is the main payer. It supplies medicine to three different administrative clusters, which is federal, state, and municipality. And these demands keep coming, and it is the most transparent system that you will see in the world, where there is nothing in a closed tender. It's all open tender, and it is bidding, and through the bidding, it's an open bidding, and the bidding is not closed bidding at all. So it's completely transparent and free of a lot of these corruption things that happens in the rest of the world. So this is very important point, that it is one of the finest system of tenders in the world, where you find it's very transparent and very, very easy to operate. Private health insurance companies covers cost for medicines used within the hospital, not outside the hospital. Now, this is an important point. The private insurance is generally covering only those people who are working. It doesn't cover people who are not working. So they have to take the support of the health system, which is Ministry of Health or the public health system. So they have to go and depend on public health system. The private insurance, similar to India, is something which you must understand, that it is different. That it's a similar thing that we have in India. I'm forced to do the comparison between India and Brazil, because in terms of the market they're same, in terms of behavior they're same, except that our health system is not as advanced as Brazil, but yet an advanced Brazil health system has suffered because of this pandemic. So pandemic was as catastrophic for India as it was for Brazil. So again, why do I say this? I say this because it's an opportunity. Whenever we come back, we come back to the fact that this market has opportunity. You need to have an appetite. You need to have the ability to go in the market and be ready to fail. So there is an example of Strides. There is an example of Torrent, which is a great example, where Torrent went to Similars market and this thing Strides entered into hospital market, and they both succeeded. They both succeeded to a great extent. But all these people had this. It cannot be done by a single business manager. It has to be a collective thought, that everybody has to come together and understand that Brazil is not a Kenya. I'm sorry to use this example again and again, or a small market. In Latin America, this is a huge market, and it requires that type of attention. It requires a very huge attention. Okay, let's move on. Oh, Andresa is gone. So anyway, I think I think it's a very important thing that the two segments has to be understood. The complexities are within the segments also. The complexity of a pharmacy product is not in saying that you register a product. The registration is done via similar route, via new product route, via route of generics route. So there are various routes in which you can register a product. So we'll try and explain as much as we can. Although there is a whole lot of thing to be understood when you talk about the registration requirements of Brazil. But the institutional business, I think Andresa will explain that the institutional business is two types: the injectable and non-injectable. So the injectable will have pharmaceutical equivalents to be done, and non-injectable will have to do the bioequivalents to be done. Bioequivalence is done with the Brazilian reference product. It is not done by international reference product. It does not take into account anyone. So, for example, Lipitor is the atorvastatin innovator. If it is not launched in Brazil and XYZ has launched it, that XYZ product would become the reference product. So our innovator and reference is two different things. I will leave it to Andresa to explain this a little later. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Sure. In the regulatory section, we can go over this in more details. But just to complement your speech, GP, regarding the health insurance, the private ones, it is mostly used by the one who are employed because it's too expensive. In fact, so what happens here? It's the companies, they do pay for the bigger amount of the pen, and the employee, they just pay a short percentage. So that's why it happens. And nowadays is more or less less than 1/3 of the population who are using the private health insurances. Just to point.
Yeah, that's a very important point, because you always want low price generics in a market where out of pocket is encouraged. So you need to reduce the prices of the medicine and make it more accessible to people. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Andresa. Now, just for academic interest, it would be important to know which are the strong players in this place. Unfortunately, I am very sad to say that I don't see many Indian companies named here. I would love to see that. I would love to see more Indian companies named in this list. We have NC Pharma, which was EMS earlier, Hypera, Europharma, Sanofi, which is an international company, Ashray is one of the larger generic company in Brazil, Novartis, GSK, Bayer, Biolabis, Libs. Libs is one of the fastest growing company in the last few years. It's a cancer company. It sells cancer drugs. CMED, which is a group of Biolabi, meaning they're brothers. FQM, which is based in Rio. Novo Nordisk, of course, everybody knows, and AstraZeneca. And Unio Quimica, you'll be surprised to see three companies, CMED, Biolab, and Unio Quimica, which belongs to one family. Three different brothers, they run it independently, completely independently, but beautiful business that they have done. And Unio Quimica is also very strong in hospital segment. In institutional, that is hospital segment, you have Roche, which is leading. You can understand why it leads because of its MABs. GSK leads because of its vaccines. J&J, of course, is a large company, Novartis, MSD. These are all companies which are multinationals, and they have MABs in their portfolio. Then Takeda, Sanofi, Pfizer, BMS. Europharma is the first national company in the first 10, which I'm sure in days to come will change as more and more national companies. If you remember in India, in 20, 30 years back, it was dominated by multinationals. But it is now, the multinationals are very difficult to find. You have to take a microscope and look for them if they are there in the first 10 or first 20. So that exactly is the same change is going to happen. Let me tell you one thing, that in manufacturing companies, Indian companies which are manufacturing, Zydus Cadila has got a manufacturing unit, Lupin has a manufacturing unit, Strides was the first one which had the manufacturing unit. So having a manufacturing unit is always an advantage. Okay, next one, please. Hey, you can take some time off, Andresa. Please take care of him right now. I'll keep speaking. You can take a time off and take care of the baby. Andresa. Okay, this is to understand what is the India presence in the Brazilian market. And it is significant that we have company like Accord, which is in TAS, Glenmark, Torrent. Ranbaxy has become very large after the takeover of Ranbaxy by Sun. It is because of Sun's culture that the Ranbaxy business has started, because they had a lot of registrations which were all going waste. Then Lupin is one company which did an acquisition of Medquimica, and by this acquisition they have made a significant presence in the last few years in Brazil. I remember this acquisition was done around 5-6 years back, and it has become a very large business in due course. Erba, which is another company which has got a base in Minas Gerais, a place called Minas Gerais. It is ACG partner, one of the partner companies. ACG also has a unit, which is a separate unit in São Paulo, but it is a partner of ACG, which is there in Erba. Aurobindo, of course, it has a manufacturing unit in Anápolis. And it has been there in the country for 30, 40 years. It's done very well there. Zydus Cadila, I think it has become significant player because of a local manufacturing unit. They took over a company called Nico Labs in a few years back, and they have done very, very well. Cipla, of course, has...
Can I ask a question, Professor?
Sure, 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 sure.
So, referring to your previous slides, when you said that the business in Brazil is divided into two parts, the half of it is obviously the institutional business. So when I am manufacturing the product out there, be it any of them, is there an advantage where I am producing locally rather than exporting it, from India? And the part two is that this is like you have a full-fledged industry, a full-fledged plant which is established over there. However, if I align with a company, the local company over there, which is already into manufacturing, and if I get into some kind of a secondary or some arrangement of N-1 or N-2 or N-3 maybe, is there an advantage in institutional business?
So there are two parts of your question. I'll answer first one, which is that is there any advantage given by the tendering body towards the local manufacturing companies? Sir, please, can you can you clarify this? Because I remember that there was no advantage. There was no advantage for local manufacturing because in my portfolio we had local manufacturing product and we had imported products also. But yes, you are very right that it was localized by getting it released from the factory. From my own factory, the imported products were also released. So it was getting localized, but there was no significant advantage of a localized product.
Yeah, there is in the tender system, you mean? In the tender system, there is a little bit of advantage when you get to the same price. I mean, if you are running there and you have the same price, they are going to see if there is a local produce. Yeah, in the chain of the product. I mean, if there is something produced locally, if it's the finished product or the API or anything inside the chain, so we are going to get an advantage on this. So you're going to win the tender if you are in the same...
in case of a deadlock.
Exactly.
So this explains that pharmaceutical industry within Brazil is quite self-sufficient and very prosperous itself. Because generally it is motivation for the manufacturers to come here, give a local employment locally, etc., and therefore we will also give you some accord on this. But probably in the case of Brazil, maybe they're already there. Like in the United States, it doesn't, you do there, do here, doesn't matter as much. Is it
No, I think the demand for products is more than what the locally is getting produced. So if I had to articulate this, I would articulate it this way, that the market demand is there, but complexities are there in terms of getting into the market. The American market is very simple in comparison to the Brazilian market, because in an American market, you can go to a distributor, a pan-American distributor, and sell the product one place. So there is no need for manpower. Whereas in Brazil, you always require manpower to promote the products, to take the products into the field. So the end user will get the product only when there is an expense of going to the market. But the other point which you were asking earlier is this, that is manufacturing important? Yes, manufacturing is important. And does Brazil require Indian companies? Yes, they require, because there is always a choice to reduce the prices. The current prices that we have is pretty high. And as I have told you earlier, that if the market is 25 billion, the units would be 5 times lesser than India. So the unit price is higher, and you have to bring it down by bringing more competition. So when any Indian company goes, it brings in better technology and it brings in a lot of competition. So the competition always drives down the business. And don't forget that with competition is also competence which is going into the market. You are giving the ability to do new products. the system has got completely broken because of COVID. Then they don't have a supplier for midazolam. They don't have a supplier for fentanyl or enoxaparin because all of them are not manufactured locally extensively. It is manufactured by one or two companies. So Crystalia gave up, said, raise his hand, I cannot do it. Pharma raised his hand because all of them could do, there is so much of scope. That's why I use the word, there is a repressed demand.
Yes.
Demand is there and we have to cater to that demand. Have I answered your question, Ashish?
Sure, yes.
Sir, I have
Professor,
one observation.
I would like to...
Yeah, it is, sir. You can go ahead.
Please, Mr. Raman.
Yeah, I have one observation in the two slides.
Okay.
On the previous slides, previous slides and the current slides. On the previous slides, I couldn't able to see a more the Indian company which has been there in the top, or maybe it's like almost negligible, or no Indian company was there onto the first slides, the top. And the second observations is now on this slides that you have mentioned that these are the couple of the Indian company. But in the previous slides that you have mentioned, there is the two kinds of the market is there. One is the retail and second is the institution. So where this all the Indian company, they are like the dominating, whether it's in the retail or in the institutions.
See, it's different companies and different skill sets. So Torrent is very strong in retail, very strong. Glenmark is stronger in institution, lesser in retail. Similarly, Randasi is stronger in retail, but it has got a portfolio in hospital business also. Lupin is more, am I right? Lupin is more retail and less hospital. Similarly, this Aurobindo is more hospital. Zydus Cadila is retail and small hospital. So every company has a different way of going into the market. The opportunity being 60-40, you can address any of these opportunity, whether it is a retail market or non-retail market. See, we're using the word non-retail because it covers a lot of other things also. Yeah. Dr. is actually one of those companies which has gone into Brazil 3 times. It has gone, exited. So this is the problem. The sustenance is always a problem, and the cost of operation is phenomenal. It's very high. The salaries are very high. So this is prohibitive, but it gives returns in future. I will just tell you one example of returns is that when Stride sold to Mylan, and I was part of that due diligence and the selling process, it sold the business for $420 million. That's not a small number, and I'm talking about a few years back, and this is like 10 years back. So it's a very...
This is the size of a Kenya market, probably.
No. That's not correct. That's not correct. Kenya is bigger than that.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, Cambodia. I said sorry.
Not
Cambodia.
Cambodia.
Cambodia. I'm sorry. Cambodia.
Anyway, I think this is good points that you have raised, and I would like to now come to the fact that the Indian contribution comes through API, which is very strong. It is not that we don't have presence, which is quite a significant presence in terms of API. The inputs, there are a lot of inputs that comes from commodities which are used in the products, are used by in various product manufacturing is coming from India. We have very strong presence in imported inputs, which is in comparison to rest of the countries. Of course, China is bigger than us, but we have a significant presence there. So FG, our contribution is low, and you are very right, Raman. It is very painful not to see an Indian company in first 10. Whereas you see United States, they are already there in first 10. And not one company, there are 3-4 companies from India which is in the first 10 in the United States. And of course, this is the focus of the companies was never Brazil. Brazil was, I use this word again and again, is a mystery. It's a language difficulty is something which, is amazing.
That's true, DP. And we cannot forget also the presence of Indian companies which are not mentioned here because they are not legally constituted in Brazil, but they do have partnerships giving those shares or giving the API or finished product and doing partnerships with local companies who is going to register the product in the name of the company here. So the Indian company name is not appearing here, but their presence, it's real. It is here in Brazil. A lot of companies like this.
Yes, I must add that NATCO has now recently started a local company. So these are all local companies, Indian companies, but with local registration, local, yeah.
Legal entity. With the
Yes,
legal
legal
entity.
entity. Yes. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
So much engrossed in your talk, we are forgetting one particular main aspect of this whole gamut. Those are our viewers. The viewers are very, very happy and they are appreciating and applauding you. Mr. Manjunath Shetty, Mr. Shailesh Kapadia, they are saying the great deliberation. Mr. Vidyasagar Sharma says that very informative and insight. Mr. Ajay Singh says, hi, is this exemption of export to Brazil related to COVID pandemic only or it's general? I think we have already answered it. Mr. Rajneesh Negi says that it's nice initiative. Mr. Kalairaj says that good and informative ones. Mr. Vivek Chandra is asking for US FDA and EU approved plant, does ANVISA provides any advantage for product registration?
No, it doesn't. Actually,
it doesn't.
No mutual recognition.
Then we have many more viewers who are appreciating you. I would just take their name. Mr. Joydeep, Mr. Kiran Bhatia, Mr. Renato Monterio, Mr. Manish Singh is saying best example for local advantage is in biosimilar in PDP arrangement with government. Mr. Satyanarayan Raja Dandu says great going and information session team LPC. Miss Pallavi Darji says, does all Indian companies have their own manufacturing unit in Brazil?
Not all.
She's asking, does all Indian companies have their own manufacturing unit in Brazil?
No, it is not all of them, but some of them which I mentioned, they have acquired companies locally and some of them had built. So Strides was one of those companies which built companies there, manufacturing units there. But otherwise, for example, Zydus, Aurobindo also built a company. Torrent has acquired a company. Glenmark has acquired. Accord has acquired. These have acquired small units, it is required. And Medchemica was acquired by Lupin. So there are a lot of companies which have acquired companies in Brazil, but not necessarily all of them. I think Andresa mentioned this some time back that these are having their local entity, but there are many more companies who are not local entities, but they are involved in the exports from India to Brazil. So Pallavi, to your question, there are not all of them have manufacturing units in. I'm happy that Manish asked you a question. Manish is based in Brazil, and Manish works for Wockhardt, and he's got a very good understanding of the government market. That's why he mentioned about PDP, which Andresa will speak about a little later now. Okay.
Yeah, we can enter into the subject.
Information. Manish was here in LPC in one of the session earlier. Manish happens to be a good friend of mine, and he was in LPC forum a few months back.
Okay, very good, very good, very good.
Those the compliments are coming, keep coming. So I will just finish them so that nobody feels that we are not acknowledging their compliments. Mr. Vijay Bhaskar, he says, Great to watch you all. Mr. Yashwant Misra says, insightful DP sir. Mr. Ashok VV says that special thanks to DP sir for detailed information on Brazil pharma market. Mr. Ram Sunil says that very informative. Thanks for the information. Preeti is saying thanks to speakers and LPC for a very informative and insightful session. Thank you very much once again, DP sir, and let us continue.
Yeah, there's a question from Vishal from Germany who asks this. Maybe Andresa can ask this question: is that does a EU or US FDA plant which is approved requires Anvisa approval also?
If I'm sorry,
Does
UFDA.
a plant which has already been approved by US FDA and EU would require Anvisa or not?
It is. We require it. Yes.
Okay. Okay, fine. I hope Vishal, you have been answered.
Vishal, how are you? I am. Vishal is my ex-colleague.
Go ahead.
Andresa, Vishal is my ex-colleague.
75% of the industry is
Vishal is
ex-colleague.
your ex-colleague, Vishal is my ex-colleague, and Vishal is Ashish's ex-colleague.
I'm saying
The word is so small.
yeah.
Vishal, just to answer your question, I repeat what Andresa said, that there is no mutual recognition for EU approved and this one EU approved or US FDA approved plant. It has to go through the Anvisa rigmarole. Okay. So
and there is a follow-up question from Vishal also, which says that because probably he has caught your words, released locally. Okay. So he is asking that what do we mean by release locally? Does it mean that the analytical testing and cross-checking of the packing in MOH approved laboratory or testing in your own local laboratory is also allowed?
Let me answer this question. It means that every company which is importing product from anywhere in the world has to release locally, and it's preferred to do from their own laboratory. So an importer is obligated to have his own laboratory to release his products. There is an option of RABLAs, which is the government labs, but the release of the product which you have brought have to be released by you and in your lab. So it doesn't go to an external lab. It doesn't go to a RABLAs, which is the government approved labs. It will be released by only you. So please mind you, this is a very good question, that anyone who starts operating in Brazil has to have the infrastructure of releasing the product on your own. Otherwise, you cannot you cannot sell the product in Brazil.
Yeah, maybe this was confused, GP, because when we said that the product, that the companies were not locally there, it doesn't mean that they don't have the market authorization in their name. Some of these companies, they do have the market authorization in their name. They are the marketing authorization holder, but they don't have infrastructure of manufacturing. So they act here only as an importers and distributors. And yes, like GP said, they do have the quality control here to release the products locally. Cannot release outside of Brazil, must be released here.
It could be with a partner, it could be with an importer, it could be with a company which is importing the manufacturing company which is importing. So, but it has to be released locally by you. Okay. If I am confusing you, I would only say that whether you export, if you export to a distributor, the distributor will have to have a lab locally to release that product. So you are only an exporter, but the fellow who's an importer will have to have a lab. Okay?
Okay. You go to the next slide, I think. Probably very short.
Yeah, next slide, Andresa. Okay, this is more on regulatory, and we will both put together, me and Andresa would try to explain what is the regulatory landscape. So Andresa, shoot.
I'm sorry. Yes, this is the main health. Are you able to see there? Yep.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is the main health stakeholders that we have here in Brazil, just to have an overview of them, which the first one is MOH, which is the Minister of Health here. And the Minister of Health, it's also the entity who administers the public healthcare system. It's the unified health system that we have here, which is SUS. SUS is the, SDP likely says, that is the finest health systems in the world. It's really, although has some kind of strugglings, but most everything is for free. So we have this advantage in Brazil. So the Minister of Health is also responsible to do the list. There is a national list of essential drugs. This is part of the basic assistance, pharmaceutical assistance. These lists have all the products which are given for free to the people. So in the basic area. So it's commoditized products, cheaper drugs, but here in Brazil, we also have two other spheres, levels of work of the Ministry of Health. So one is the basic one, which is the cheapest molecules which are given. The strategic program that the government have, which it is the HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. So they are diseases, strategic diseases that it's reached by Brazil government, and also the treatment is given for free to the population. So nobody pays anything for that. And we
just
do
to elaborate, just
yep.
to add to Andressa, these are completely free. The patient doesn't have to pay anything for tuberculosis, leishmaniasis, AIDS, and malaria. Nothing. The patient will pay zero, and it is all obtained by SUS.
Also in this area is included the human health care, all the contraceptives, everything is given for free by SUS. The other level of SUS is the specialized medicines program, which is some molecules with high added values. So are very costly drugs. So the government, they give for free, but you need to meet a protocol. So the patient need to be inside the protocols of Ministry of Health criteria. For example, there are for the diseases of Alzheimer, Parkinson, hepatitis, severe asthma, severe acne, mental disorders. So all diseases diseases which the treatment is very, very costly. So the government gives, but you need to apply in a different way, and you need the patient needs to meet this protocol. And this one is centrally purchased by the federal government. So here we have three levels in the government, which is federal, the states, and the municipalities, which is the cities. So some drugs are purchased centrally by the federal government and distributed to the states. And other drugs, no, they are purchased by the state or purchased by the municipalities, by cities. Anything that you want to add, DP?
No, I think go ahead. Let's talk about the Anvisa guidelines. You'll have to spend a little more time here. I am observing that we have spent nearly 1.5 hours. But this is the most important point, and I would request you to kindly explain this in detail.
Yeah, sure.
And break, okay?
Sure. So we come to our health agency, which is Anvisa, And in a broad way, Anvisa it's responsible to promote health here. It's the sanitary control of the production of all health products, consumption of products and services subject to sanitary surveillance. So Anvisa is responsible for all of this. Also controls ports, airports, the borders, and they grant, of course, the authorizations of all kinds of drugs in the basis of safety and efficacy. And unfortunately, as we mentioned before, Anvisa, they have their own way of approval, so they don't take approvals from other agencies. Nowadays, an agency approval has a weight. Anvisa take that in account, but it doesn't mean that Anvisa is going to use that approval to base their own approval. And in case of Anvisa, here in Brazil also, Anvisa is responsible for saying yes to the patents. We have the INPI, which is the patent agency, but in case of drug products or pharmaceuticals, Anvisa needs to give their say also to grant patent in the country. So we come to CIMAD. CIMAD is the agency responsible to regulate prices. It's attached to Anvisa, but it's another agency. So they set the prices for all drugs in Brazil, the regulated ones. We have some kind of drugs as OTCs, which are not regulated, so they have free prices. So what CIMAD does, they establish the maximum price of ex-factory price, which is the PF, and from the PF sets the maximum price to the consumer. So we have here in Brazil two prices established by CIMAD, by this agency. One is PF and another one is PMC. PF is used in the institutional area, in the hospital area, because in the hospital, you don't sell drugs to the patient. So you give it service, you give it the treatment. So hospital, they use the PF. And when the company sells to a hospital, so they are going to base their prices on the PF. PMC, it's the consumer price, is the maximum consumer price, which is going to retail. Anvisa, CIMAD, which is branch of Anvisa, CIMAD also check this regularly if any company is having prices over the permitted ones. Every year there is an increase. CIMAD determines yearly in March some price increase. It's based on inflation, exchange rate. They do a calculation to establish the percentage of the price increase, and the companies, they can or cannot include this percentage in their own prices. Usually the company, they do. So they do the maximum prices, but when they go to market, they use discounts. They apply discounts, and most of the companies, they don't work with the maximum price in the retail, in case of the retail. There is a difference here in Brazil for prices of generics, similar, and innovative drugs. So the generic ones, they need to base it. Generic and similars, they need to base their prices on the reference drug that can be the innovative drug or not. As DP said previously, here in Brazil, sometimes the reference drug, it's not the innovative one anymore. Sometimes the innovative is not in the country, they have a disruption or something. So when the drug, the innovative, the first drug, the first molecule is not there anymore available, Anvisa goes and determine another product to be the reference one, which can be even a generic, for example, or branded generic. Can be any product that Anvisa feels that meet all the criteria to be the reference drug. So whenever you register a generic or a similar, you have to reference your price to this reference drug. So in case of the generic, the price is going to be 35% less than this reference listed drug. So you don't have choice. You need to put 35% less of the reference drug prices. And in case of the similar drugs, which is the branded generics, the only difference from the generics unbranded and the similars is that the similars, they have a brand. The companies, they establish a name to the product. So in this case, regarding the price, they need to work with a lower price than the reference, but there is no establishment of percentage. So it can be 1% less, 10% less. So the company decided how much less they want to work in the price of the branded ones. And the innovative drug, then you have to do a research on the prices of this molecule outside of Brazil, in other countries, and apply Anvisa your suggestion of prices. And Anvisa will accept or not CMED. CMED is going to accept or not your suggestion of price. Normally, you set up some meetings, some discussions to get into competitive price, but it's something very hard nowadays. The pricing control becomes sometimes, especially for drugs who are very costly, the prices that Brazil is going to take, it's not enough to worth the commercialization here. So many times this commercialization, they are stopped because of CMED price approval. They don't give a price enough that it enables you to have a margin to operate in Brazil market.
Good, very good, Andressa. I'm very happy that you, it's a very complex thing. The complexity lies in the system, the MOH source to understand. It took me also a lot of time to really understand the system. However, what is easy to understand is Anvisa. As he explained that, Anvisa basically has two parts, which is, I'm sure you must have explained, GMP part, and the other part is the marketing or granting of marketing authorization. So these two parts are very important for you to understand that this is regulated by Anvisa. The other thing which is very important is that the country is different, it's quirky, and I use this word very to explain to you why it is quirky. So when it doesn't take an approval of FDA, EMEA, etc., it doesn't take. That's it. They will not give an explanation for that. Similarly, if the reference product is not from Brazil, they will not take your BE studies. You have to do the BE studies there. The clinical study protocols are required for any new product. For example, if an innovator has launched a product in USA and doesn't feel responsible enough doesn't feel attractive enough to get into Brazil, and you as a generic company have developed a product which is generic and you have launched it in the United States of America. You want to do that in Brazil, it will be treated as a new product, and therefore you will have to do clinical trial. You will have to do clinical trial on that, whether it is phase 3 or what, but you have to do a clinical trial. Then, with regards to pricing, it's a very, very...
1 minute, I'm sorry to interrupt, because on the line of the same discussion, there is a question from Brazil which is coming in, is that about a drug which is available in global market, a very old molecule, but not available in Brazil. How would Anvisa treat that subject for registration?
Exactly what
Exactly.
I mentioned.
It
Yeah.
said, new drug.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, it's going to be a new drug. If it's not in Brazil, even if it's not the combination, maybe the molecules, they are in Brazil in separately, but if the combination
As
is
common as hypothetically, if it is just a paracetamol, if it is not there
Yes,
in,
you have to do clinical trials.
wow. Okay.
So that's how quirky the market is. And to understand these things, it takes time. And I must say that, Andressa was able to explain the pricing thing. And pricing is extremely complex. It cannot be completed in a session, but we have touched upon it. And if there are queries, we would be happy to answer those queries. But the pricing, the Anvisa, the MOHSUS, this is one of the most difficult part of entering Brazil. If you have understood this, then you have understood everything.
yeah, I think the generic and the similar, which is the branded generic prices, are easy to understand and to have an idea, of course, because you have another product there to reference yourself. So you know what price more or less you are going to get. But the case of the new drugs, the innovative ones, so then it's very hard to predict because it's an extensive work of research that Anvisa, that CEMED requires, CEMED Anvisa requires for you to get your price done. And I as I explained before, there's sometimes enable the company to come to Brazil. I mean, the product to be registered here. Sometimes the margins are not sufficient and it doesn't work.
That's the reason why, Ashish, your question, that why it didn't come to Brazil. It didn't get a good price. Therefore, the company decided not to enter Brazil. And when a generic version comes and it finds it attractive, then it has to go through the whole gamut. The whole gamut includes the clinical trial and everything that is required for a new entity, NCE, that has to be done in Brazil.
What about if the product is existing, but the release form is different?
Again, you need an NCE. It is NCE. Yeah, and there is any combinations, any change in the formulation will require, because there is no reference product. Right? If there is a change in the release, if there is no reference product, then it becomes an NCE. If there is a reference product, then it is a similars or generic.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's because Anvisa, they don't accept the reference sold outside of Brazil. So we cannot take a reference that is sold outside of
From
Brazil.
outside, yes.
Yeah, so if there is no reference product inside, there is no other way that you need to apply as a new drug, a new chemical entity.
Let's go to the next slide, Andressa.
So this is a very snapshot of how Anvisa works. For the registration, we are talking here specifically about drug products because we didn't have time, of course, to talk about the other types of registration as health products, instruments, and any other kind. Even the phytotherapics, for example, we are talking about pharma. So the classification that Anvisa uses is generic, as I just said, which is with no name. So it's an unbranded product. So it's a generic. We have the similars, which is a branded generic, and you need to give a name to that product. And nowadays, from a couple of years to now, Anvisa established also some rules for you to give this name. It's not any name that you can give. There are a lot of rules that you need to follow to establish a name for the product. One example is that the product name cannot contain 50%, more than 50% of the unbranded name, of the molecule name. And there is various checklists, various items that you need to follow to establish this name. And you need to send it to Anvisa a couple of names, and then Anvisa will choose. In fact, it's not exactly the name you want. Even though you follow the rules, it's not exactly the name you want that it's going to be given. You need to send it to Anvisa, couple of names, and Anvisa from that names will pick one that it finds more feasible to that product by their rules. So it's a little bit complicated nowadays, the branded generics in this sense, in the commercial name. Any doubt on this, TP? Regarding the...
Go ahead, just go ahead and complete the deadlines, prioritization, fees, and timelines, so that we understand this. Then we can have the question answer session in the end.
Yeah, sure. So we have the new drugs. As we just explained, the new drugs are the ones which are not in the country, but doesn't mean it's innovative. It doesn't mean that it's innovative. It's an innovative drug. Maybe it's in a form or a strength or a combination which is not here in the country. So Anvisa you take as a new drug. And in the other side, there are the innovative drugs, really, that's going to be applied and have specific rules for innovative drug. Each one of this has a specific rule of registration. Nowadays, similar and generics are pretty the same. There is no differentiation in the registration checklist for these two types of products. So the deadlines of Anvisa. It depends on the classification of the drug. So nowadays we are facing this with the pandemic. Nowadays we are facing this priority thing. So if the drug it is a priority for the Ministry of Health, or for SUS, for the government, then Anvisa will put this in the front in the line. There is a score, in fact. Before pandemic, Anvisa used to also always work with this priority thing with a nice score. If it meets some of the criteria that they established there, you have a nice score. So then you can be prioritized. Your drug can be prioritized or not. Your appeal will go in the front or not. Otherwise, it go to the lines, which is divided by classifications of drugs. And nowadays, it is faster than the past. We have suffered a lot with Anvisa timelines in the past, which used to take, 5-6 years sometimes to get a drug approval. And nowadays, with the recent changes of Anvisa in rules, is taking more or less a year and a half. It depends if your registration will get a lot of demands or not. Because once you apply with all the documentation required, Anvisa can go back to you and demand more documents or demand more clarity. And you have a time to give the response to Anvisa. And Anvisa also has another time to give back to you. So the timeline to have a product approval, it depends a lot on the quality of the dossier, let's say. It does. So the prioritization, as I told, it depends on the public relevance, mostly the public relevance to this drug, what is happening nowadays. So for pandemic, all of products that can be used as an aid for the treatments cannot be exactly only for coronavirus, but anything that helps the patients in the other treatments when it's hospitalized. Whenever you are hospitalized, you may develop comorbidities, and then you're going to need various types of products. usually nowadays, all kind of hospital products are getting prioritized in this moment of the pandemic. Until when, we don't know, but Anvisa is keeping extending the legislation. I think we will take some time. They are not going to cancel these prioritizations very soon. Fees, Anvisa fees are high. It depends on the economic size of the company. I didn't mention here all the fees because it varies a lot, because it depends on the economic size of the company. So it's going to be from, for example, on a registration, let's say, it can vary from 7,000 reais to 30,000 reais, more or less, a registration of a generic. It depends on the size of the company. And this is for everything, for the registration fees, for the GMP fees, for any kind of marketing authorization, company authorization fees also that is necessary. So the fees will be according to the type of the company. The timelines, as I said, it goes by a queue, specific queues on product classification. So generics are going together. Post registrations, for example, they go to a different queue. Biologics goes to a different queue. So it depends on the product classification. The queue is smaller or bigger. Usually here in Brazil, the bio ones, it's very small because we don't have many bios being registered. So the queue, it's fast. It's fast to have the product registration in this sense.
Good, Andressa. I think we have covered everything. But as I always say that it's not easy to cover Brazil in a day and in a few hours. But I'm sure, Andressa, you've done a very good job in tickling the mind of everybody so that they can start talking about Brazil and they're taking interest in Brazil. So let's go to the next slide. I think
questions are pouring in from our YouTube viewers.
Just 1 second, Hitesh, okay. Just 1 second. Let me finish this so that we don't have to come back to the slides and we can take the questions immediately. Yes, go ahead, Andressa, change the slide. Is this the last slide?
Yes. And okay, then I will leave the email. Also, if anybody needs more detail help with the law or with the barriers here, entry barriers, the marketing, so then can email us in the NUS consultants' email for us to help on this.
See, I am associated with India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce also. So I would like to mention that to you that that association helps me a lot in getting to some information and access to larger companies in Brazil, because almost all the major companies, including several distributors, are members of Indo-Brazil Chamber of Commerce. I am the senior fellow there, and it helps to have this access. So first of all, I would like to thank Andressa for a lovely presentation. Andressa, you did a very good job in presenting this. And I'm sure that, a lot of people have we have raised the curiosity in people to ask you a lot of questions. Now, I would like to say thanks as far as the presentation is concerned. Hitesh, over to you for the questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was, Andressa, you can remove the slides now.
Hitesh, Saurabh wants to say something. Yes, so we can.
Yeah,
please. Yeah, we have viewers from YouTube and they are asking some questions related to product registrations. So our viewer, Mr. Salesh Kapadia, wishes to know that is there any advantage or relaxation in terms of registrations of nutraceuticals if the product is of origin of Canada or of UK?
If there is an, go ahead.
The question is that if the product is of Canada or US origin, is there a possibility
Yes,
of
nutraceutical.
nutraceutical, can it be registered faster?
Yes, exactly.
Depends on the origin. Actually, no. Independently on the origin of the product, it doesn't give a fast track. Let's say
everybody has to follow the same process.
Yes.
Okay, so we have another.
I must add here. I must add here.
The relevance. I'm sorry, JP, to interrupt you. It's only the relevance to the public health here. So this is going to give you a fast track or a priority, let's say, to the Ministry of Health, so to Anvisa, to go and say, oh, so this product is important to the population, so I'm going to give the priority to get the product faster registered.
And sorry to disturb you again. And Risha, your slide share is not yet removed. If you can remove it, it would be even better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay, so I will answer one thing that although the regulatory guidelines don't change for anything, but in marketing these products which are Canada and US origin, definitely it has advantage in the market. So in the marketplace for commercialization, it will be advantages, but for registration, the rules are same.
Thank you so much. One more question from Mr. Manish Singh, and it is related to Anvisa plant approval. We have learned from Ms. Anvisa that even if the plant is approved by US FDA, it has to be approved by Anvisa as well. It is not a mutual recognition. And recently we have seen there is a development that Anvisa has been included into PICS scheme. So the question from Mr. Manish Singh that will a PICS approved facility will be mutually recognized by Anvisa or not?
In the future, we don't know. Nowadays it is because of the pandemic and the desktop approval that they are doing. As Anvisa cannot travel, as the Anvisa people cannot travel to inspect, cannot do the audits, so they are doing this desktop approval. So they use the PICS members as an entity to trust, as a reliable member or company to trust, so then they do this desktop approval. So but it doesn't mean that they won't ask for documentation.
Is it right to say that it is a very temporary arrangement and it could change in future?
Yeah.
Thank you. Over to you, sir.
One more question is there. With the new regulation in place with Anvisa, where CADIFA is applied directly by API manufacturer, how does this affect the timeline of the approval of dossier? Can we expect a faster approval?
In the dossier, no. In fact, what you have, it's a faster time of approval as a whole, because before you needed to ask for the API approval and wait, and then with this approval, you apply the registration of the product. So nowadays, if the product already, the API company already have the CADIFA in hand, CADIFA is a certificated saying that the company is already approved by Anvisa and needs to be only once. So whenever a company has a certificate, which is CADIFA, so they doesn't need to be approved to each of one of the partners that they have. This improves the timeline in the sense that you already have the certificate in hands and you can right away apply for your product registration.
So CADIFA is like DMF or CEP of Brazil. So Brazil has its own system and it doesn't accept DMF or CEP. It has a system of CADIFA.
Yeah, the change now is because before, until last year, what happened is each company, even though an API is the same API supplied to 10 companies, each one of these 10 companies needed to ask for the GMP approval for the API company. Nowadays, no. So if the first one it's granted, so the certificate is going to be released, and Anvisa you use this for any other company that will come afterwards and work with that API also.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can I take some more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. ICS Verma is asking, though I understand this question was taken somewhere, is there a concept of MRP exist in Brazil?
Andres, again, the MRP means maximum retail price. So PMC, you can talk about PMC, please.
Yes. So the maximum, but can you repeat the question again? Because it got, the sound here were not perfect.
DP sir, can you explain what the question is? Because
The question is, Andresa, in India, we have a concept of maximum retail price. And in Brazil, we have a concept of PMS or PMC. So if you can explain the PMC to them, they would understand.
Yes. So here in Brazil, for the retail side, for any kind of drug, of course, but this is more applied to the retail. We have the maximum consumer price, which is given by CMED, which the entity linked to Anvisa. So the price cannot be chosen by the company. Anvisa, CMED is going to grant a price. It's going to be the PF prices that you're going to give your suggestion, they will grant or not, but then you have a PF with, which is a next factory price. So it's the factory price. From this PF, there is a specific percentage that the CMED applies. It's a calculation that they do that gets to the maximum consumer price. And this maximum consumer price cannot go over this. There is a list in each pharmacy here. You find this price book that the consumer, the client can check anytime. Very well published in any place you find, and then they can check if the pharmacy, if the point of sales, they are practicing a price over the permitted one, over the listed one. Cannot go over, but the discounted, it's permitted. So there is a maximum price, but the company can work with their own discounts. As I explained before, yearly there is a price increase that is given by CMED. So it depends on the inflation and many other factors. But for example, if a 5% increase, company also has the choice of increase their own prices or not, or they can increase the prices to have the PMC, the maximum consumer price, as with a plus of 5%, but in fact, in the marketing, not working with this increase to the consumer. So it's up to the company.
Thank you, Andresa. Thank you very much for the clarification.
It is just one clarification more. That, in India, we have a printed price on the box. In Brazil, there is no printed price on the box. Therefore, PMC is just a reference price which is there as a book, and you can refer to that. But as it is not printed, everybody is mandatorily has to keep that book. So that's the difference between India and Brazil. That in India, we have a MRP printed, whereas in Brazil, it is not printed. Varmaji, I hope
it is a price controlled market rather than many other markets where there is no price control from the regulatory body. In Brazil, the regulatory body have the price control. That is a good thing, I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. DP, sir, Mr. Bhaskar Chakravarti is sending greetings to you from Bangalore.
Hi, Bhaskar, how are you?
He's your old friend, I understand.
Very old friend, yes.
Then Mr. Viraj Pawar is also sending you the regards. Mr. Parbod Joshi from Malaysia, he's saying there is nice to have some idea about Brazil. Mr. Dhanend Srivastav is sending regards from Ahmedabad. Mr. Parbod Joshi is having one question. Can one manufacturer register more than one brand for the same molecule in Brazil?
Yes, they can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
There is another question.
Mr. Parbod, this question is already answered. Do the product registered in US, EU get faster registration in Brazil? No. Mr. Jitendra Bharadwaj from Tanzania is sending regards to you and Andresa, and he's saying that great presentation, lot of learning.
Thank you.
Then, yeah, it is from Facebook. Let me just go through YouTube if we have missed something.
Couple of questions on YouTube.
Yeah, Ashish,
I know that costing and all, it can be covered, but there is a general inquisitive curiosity that what would be the average bandwidth of a bioequivalence /CT/ registration cost and timelines. I know it is, it is not
very difficult to answer this question in one line. I would only say one thing, that when it comes to bioequivalence study, it is at least 3 times the cost of India. So, and as far as clinical trial is concerned,
I was talking about one of the MABs. Somebody told me, not told me, it is ongoing, that if it helps, that a MAB registration would take about 3 years, and clinical trials and all, the amount could go up to $2 million.
Yeah, possible. Very possible.
Yes, it depends a lot. In fact, what is going to increase a lot the price of this registration is the price of the reference drug. If the reference drug is too expensive, so then you have to buy all the quantity necessary to do the trials, the bioequivalence and also the pharmaceutical equivalence. So this will increase a lot the price of this registration of these trials.
I had to do one, I had to do a bioequivalence on erlotinib, and it cost me a bomb. It cost me a bomb to buy the reference from I think it was 700,000 reais. At that time, an exchange rate was 2.8 or 2.9. So it was nearly $250,000 for one. So 250,000 is what, 1.5 crores. So you really don't have any parameters. Now, with regards to registration cost, see, there is, I think this is what we need to explain, that registration cost is dependent on too many things. One is the size of company which is registering. So if it is a small size company, it will actually divide it into 3. It is micro impresa, medium, and large company. So the registration fee changes from these 3 categories. Then in certain product categories, the registration fees are different. You can ask these questions specifically for a particular product if you want, and a product partner you have, we can answer that more specifically.
I have been recently informed because the product in India is right now hot, amphotericin B liposomal. The Brazilian registration may cost approximately $900,000 to $1 million, with approximately 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years of timelines.
See, as Ampho B Lepo is not registered in Brazil, therefore the problem would happen. If the product was registered and if the reference product was available, the cost would be much lesser. Am I right, Andres?
No, in fact, it is registered, but the Ampho B liposomal, there is one
biological. It's a biological product, therefore it will go into
And
biological.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, the liposomals, they have a different rule, so they don't need this, the reference one.
Okay, Ashish, just to answer your question, liposomal amphotericin B is like enoxaparin. So each enoxaparin that goes and gets registered in Brazil has to undergo a clinical trial because it's not a biosimilar. It has to go through a clinical trial as it's a biologic product. Any more questions? If not, then
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Andresia. There are regards, lot many compliments are coming. Mr. Vidyasagar Sharma from Tanzania, he is conveying regards to you and Andresia. Madam Satwant Kaur Manku from Mumbai, she is conveying the regards. Madam Pallavi Darji is also conveying your regards.
oh, she must tell her that she's my colleague, huh? Ex-colleague.
Okay,
We worked
okay.
in Unimark. Hi, Pallavi.
Okay.
Hi.
So, Pallavi, we have this live pharma coalition, which is live every Sunday at 11 a.m. And we have 4 sessions. First Sunday, we talk about the leadership. The second Sunday, we talk about the global pharma. Third Sunday, we talk about the education. Fourth Sunday, we talk about the young leadership, and fifth Sunday, we talk about the woman leadership. So you may get enrolled in LPC through Facebook, and you can see what are the interesting sessions are coming. For global, from this year, what we are trying to do, that every Sunday we are going to a particular market, which is difficult market, which is not known market to Indian pharma, so that the awareness of those markets are increasing. There are so many markets where anybody knows, everybody can go, everybody can do the business. But for Brazil, I'm not sure how many companies even think of Brazil as a market. So next month we will be probably talking about Philippines, then South Africa, then UAE. So every month we will be discussing a market which is interesting to know, interesting to learn. Thank you very much, DP sir. Over to Ashish, if Ashish has to add anything.
I think it was a very, I would say, a notch above session, highly technical, which was anyway expected, being Brazil. I am sure that the audience probably would, the quality of questions were also quite, in accordance and at par with the presentation. So it was not a, and the audience had quite a bit of understanding. I'm sure I like the curiosity, because Andresa, you would be pleased to know that you were being heard in Africa, the Western and the Eastern Africa as well. In Asia, of course, the questions were coming right from under your table from Brazil itself.
No, from all across Europe.
Yes. So
there are audience from Europe. There are audience from South.
So there was a European. So Europe was there, Africa was there, Asia was there, Northern and Southern Africa was there. So it was fantastic coverage, I would say. Probably in depth-wise, this would have been one of the top presentations. Obviously, the quality of the speaker also, DPS, or I was lovingly called professor, is always looked forward to be heard, actually. And with his immense knowledge and experience and the relationship which he has probably across the industry. I name a person, Hitesh names a person, he's already his friend, all knows. We just saw a glimpse here that, wherever, whatever. So that is what you earn in a relationship, when you spend 4 decades, more than 4 decades in the industry. So I would say, and Andresa, you were very, very informative, in-depth, though it was difficult and technical, but I think you made it very simplistic, and as much as simplistic as possible. And obviously, as Professor said earlier, that it will take at least 2 or 3 sessions to get into there, to get into that zone, that how it functions. Maybe if required, and we'll see if there is a demand, we go LPC X, LPC Y, maybe part 2, part 3 Brazil, and we can conduct this kind of a session, which would be great. But thank you so much. Saurabh, if you want to add something.
I would like to second your thoughts, Mr. Ashish, that, and I think we have done an injustice in terms of keeping this session limited to just 1.5 hours. I mean, the plethora of information.
Beyond 2 hours now.
Previously, we have already crossed 2 hours. So the plethora of information that Ms. Andresa and DP sir have, and the more important aspect is they are very generous in sharing this information. So it was a really delight listening to you, gentlemen. So thank you, Andresa. Thank you, DP sir, for coming on board and sharing the stage with us. I mean, it's a real pleasure and an honor to sharing the screen with you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Andresa.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Raman.
Raman.
Yeah, good evening. So I think we have covered all the things. Now we have come of the end of the today's live pharma coalition, that is the LPC-64 global leadership sessions on the topic of Brazil-India pharma perspective. Thanks to LPC Forum, the platform, for giving me a start and the last word of thanks parts. Instead of saying thanks, I would like to say all the best to the speaker, because their journey is started on the LPC Learning and Sharing Forum. Very nice, informative, useful, practical day-to-day experience sessions by all three speakers. Great, well planned, time bound, run by the LPC or both our panelists, and my helping hand as like the moderator and panelist. I would like to say all the best to all our live audience and the viewer, from the Facebook audience and the viewer. Keep liking and following the LPC Facebook page. YouTube audience and the viewer, please do subscribe LPC YouTube channel. And lastly, in the international marketing, most of the time the challenges and opportunity come hand to hand. Those who have the solutions overcome the challenges in the opportunity and grab it, and the connect is open. Now, window of all the patients center in the pharmaceutical industry. So now, just I would like to share a screen again for the last part of like the thanking to all of you. So thank you so much to the live audience from the Facebook and the YouTube. And yes, of course, all three eminent speakers, those who has contributed in a very great way. I think I would like to say to DP sir onto a difference between the LPC first to 63 and 64. The great difference is live audience after a long time we get it, and an average of some around 56 was the audience live that we got it. It was the highest in the last 3 months. Second thing is on the YouTube as compared to Facebook. This is the first time I have seen in all the episodes from the first to 63. We got it the highest number of the YouTube the viewers and the audience for LPC-64. So thanks to all of them, and number of the comments and the people reach till time onto or the Facebook. This has been reached to close to 400 people. That means the 400 people, they have got engaged along with the live audience. Those who has like started watching this the video, and very nice that the interactive the question answer sessions. Thanks to DP Srivastava sir, Andresa madam, and Ashish Srivastava sir has played the dual role today, that as the panelist, moderator, and the speaker. And welcome you, sir, on the LPC platform as an executive member, taking care of the global LPC sessions. So lastly, thank you so much to all those who is around to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you also from the LPC team and our audience. I hope we could contribute something with something. And it was very nice to participate on this session. Thank you so much.
Definitely. So
I
last take home message from DP sir, from you.
Thing here.
I would like to thank everyone. Yes, Sitesh, please.
Yeah, before you conclude, I would like to add one thing for the audience, because sir, what happens, maybe 100 audience where they are live, and there would be 400 or 500 or 1,000 audience may see the program later on. If they have any question anytime, they can just put on comment, or we will put our LPC email ID. They can send their questions, their queries on LPC mail ID. We will try to answer if it is not answered here. And if somebody has to go in a commercial way, so Mr. D.P. Srivastav has a consulting firm which takes care of the market entry in Brazil and many other countries. So they can contact directly with Mr. D.P. Srivastav so that they can go commercially to Brazil and other markets. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank LPC once again for giving us this platform. I also want to thank Andresa because Andresa was going through a bad time because of the small baby. But despite that, she went ahead and created this this presentation, and plus the content that she spoke about. It was very encouraging. Andresa, of course, has been a long colleague of mine, and she continues to be associated with me in my company also. So we would be happy to take any questions later on, and whenever you want, you can direct it to us. I only say one thing at the end of the session, that please don't treat Brazil like Kenya. So I repeat this because Brazil is bigger than India in terms of pharma market. And it is a large market, so you can't wish away that market. There has to be more thinking, more understanding about this market than what you do in a Me Too market. It isn't a Me Too, and I know this myself because I have done both. I have gone as an importer and failed completely because I treated it like a market, a small market like Kenya. But when I went and worked there and I have an experience of 7 years there, I have learned a lot. And this knowledge is this, that you if you have an appetite, please have it and please go for it. Don't leave it for just because of few complications here and there. You will have it and you will have complications, but this is a market which rewards you very well. Torrent gets nearly $200 million every month. Every year. And similarly, Zydus Cadila is closing to more than $100 million. So that's not a business which you can wish away. Okay. So thank you very much.
Brazil is beyond carnivals and football.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. It is.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.